very warm welcome to you as you join us for the second session of our Paramics Workshops 2020. Now, as I mentioned in session 1, the workshops this year are quite different. Because of the coronavirus pandemic, we're unable to travel and gather together in groups around the UK and Ireland as we usually do in June. And so we're bringing these sessions to you online via our YouTube channel. Now, if you're just tuning in for the first time, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel, and then you will receive notifications of upcoming workshops. The session today is all about the developments that took place in Paramics Discovery 23, which was launched in November 2019. So we've got several features to show you today, which we brought into Paramics Discovery for version 23. And I'm going to talk you through each one in turn so that you can see how to use the new feature and really get the most out of it for your projects. So let's dive straight in. So the first feature that I want to show you from Paramics Discovery 23 is probably the most significant one, and that is the ability to undo and redo in Paramics Discovery. This is probably our most requested feature over the last few years, so it was really great to be able to get that into the product last year. So I'm going to use the model in front of me to demonstrate this feature, and it's quite straightforward to demonstrate really because it's a very simple feature to use. Now, undo and redo can apply to any network object that you can see, so nodes, links, zones, bus stops, for example, and it applies to any action on those objects, whether that is moving a node, so I'll move this node and I can take another one and let's say delete that. I could choose a different object, let's say this link, and I'll delete that. And then I'll do one more action and move this bus stop. So I've taken 4 actions there on different objects. Now, the undo option can be found on the toolbar button at the top of the screen. So you can see it there, undo, and it will undo each of those actions in turn. And if I want to redo them, I can do so using the toolbar button beside it. I can also use the keyboard keys of Control-Z and Control-Y, which is similar to many other products. So undo and redo can apply to single objects using the toolbar buttons or the keys on the keyboard. I can also apply it to multiple objects. So let's say I select all these links on this zone and delete that in one go, and then do Control-Z. It undoes that action in one go. Now, Paramics Discovery will remember 10 transactions, so 10 undos, which it will hold in its memory that you can redo again, and that applies whether it's a single object or multiple objects. So that's how it works in the network editing, but undo also applies to the dialog. So let's say I choose my categories dialog here and make some changes in this. So I can change the road type to highway, let's say minor. I'll change my width per lane and the speed of the category and toggle on over take. So I've made 5 different changes there, and I can simply undo all of those again using the toolbar button at the top of the screen, and I can redo them, or I can use Control-Z and Control-Y like so. Okay, so undo and redo applies on the network editing. It also applies in all of the dialogues, and it also applies in the Edit Demand tab where we have our trip matrices. So if I make some changes in here and just change the values on the various cells, I can then undo those and redo those again. So the next feature that I want to demonstrate this morning is the ability to merge nodes together. And I've got a model in front of me with a few gaps on the network where the network is essentially broken. Now, you might have this if you're joining 2 different networks together, or perhaps you've had to delete a section of network because you need to recode it for some reason. So you might find these gaps in the course of your model development. And the Merge Nodes feature allows you to bring 2 nodes together and essentially form them into one. And you simply do it by clicking on a node, dragging it and landing it on top of the other node, and it removes the initial node that you selected and merges it with the destination node. So depending on which one you select and which one you land on, you will end up with the node number of your choice. Now this can be useful when you don't really need an extra link, as is the case in many of these examples that you can see me demonstrating right now. It's very, very simple and easy to use. Now those examples were just joining two links together essentially by merging the nodes, but it can also work in slightly more complex situations like junctions. Now here's a junction where we've got a roundabout and we want to merge a node into that to add a third arm into that roundabout. And that works pretty well. You can see by merging that node in, it joins to the roundabout. The structure of the roundabout is very good as a result. You still need to have a close look at it and just check that other features of the roundabout are okay, like the priorities. You can see, for example, there the priority on the approach is set to major, so you need to go in and change that to minor. Where you do need to be careful though when using merge nodes is joining to a signal control junction. And I've got a crossroads here with signals on it, which you can see, and it's got 4 approaches from different directions. Now if I was to take a node and merge that into the junction and then have a look at it, I can see that there are no longer signals on that. So Paramics Discovery can't handle adding in an extra link into a junction with signals on it. So we recommend that you don't do that. Now it's very easy to change that by simply using undo, which of course is the feature that I demonstrated first. So that's merging nodes. Very, very easy to use, useful in many circumstances. Just need to take a little bit of care with signal control junctions. The third feature I want to share with you today, which was introduced into Paramics Discovery 23, is the ability to import and export signal timings. Now I've got a model in front of me, and it's got several signal control junctions in it which I can show using the network review section in the styles panel, so you can see those. This is a good model for demonstration with all of those signal control junctions. Now there's a couple of different ways to export the data from a signal control junction. One of them is using the inspector. So I'm opening up the inspector, and within the inspector I can select from the top menu signal timings, and this shows me all of the signal timings of all of the junctions in the model. So you can see the junction name on the left, and then as you move through each of the columns to the right, you can see the different information about that signal control junction. Now it's very easy to export this data by simply clicking on the export button at the top and then giving the file a name. So we'll just call this signal timings inspector and save that into the model folder. So that's one way to export the signal timing information. The second way is through the Edit Network menu, where you can go Edit Network, Export, and on this occasion we're going to be interested in features as CSV, because signal timings are exported in that format. So I'll click on Features as CSV, and this is going to give me a range of different options. I'm going to untick all of them except signal timings and export that, and it will automatically save that in beside the model. So I've got 2 exported files with signal timing information, and I can see those in my model folder there. So I'm just going to open both of those up and have a look at them. Okay, with both files open and just moving between the two, you can quickly see that the information in them is exactly the same. So it doesn't really matter which one you choose to export, you're going to get the same information out of them. Now, we can also re-import these files, but we need to understand what you can edit in the files before you import them again. And the best way to do that is actually to go back to the user interface and look at the edit signals dialog to see what the editable properties are and which ones that you can't edit. So I'm going to choose a signal control junction here at node 4. It's quite a simple one. It's a pedestrian crossing. And what I can see in here are the editable timings at the signal control junction. So, for example, the stage length, I can edit that value, as you can see. I can also edit the stage all red time and the offset. And the other thing that I can edit is the start and end time of a given phase. So in this junction where there's just one phase, I can move the start time of that phase by dragging the bar, and I can move the end time of the phase again by dragging the bar at the end. So those are the 5 different timings that you can change within this dialog. And you can also change them within the review signal timings option. So if I open that and click on these different cells, so the offset, the stage length, the stage all red, the phase start offset and the phase end offset, those are the 5 editable timings within the review signal timings table. Okay, so in the diagram and the table, I've got 5 different timings that I can edit. So when we think back to the CSV file and re-importing that, those are the 5 things that I can edit within the CSV file to then re-import into my model. So I'm going to put some new values in for the cycle offset. I'll put 10, 200 in for the stage length. I'll put a 10 in for the stage all red, and I'll set the phase start to 20 and the phase end to -20. Now, these aren't very realistic values, but they're just for demonstration purposes. I'm saving that file and closing it, and then what I want to do is import that into the model and see what happens. And I do that through the Edit Network menu, Import, Signal Timings, select my file, the Network 1 Signal Timings, and open that, and it's telling me that it's imported signal timings for the following junctions. Now, it's done it for all of the junctions in the model, but we know that the only one that's going to change is 4, where we made those changes. So I've imported those, and I can now go back to my signal editor and check that those have come in. And yes, I can see the stage length of 200, a stage all red of 10, an offset of 10, and my early phase or start of 20 and late end of -20. Okay, so the next thing that I want to share with you this morning in Paramics Discovery 23 is the ability to export network data. And you can do this through the Edit Network menu and Export. Now, if you were familiar with this menu previously, you'll have noticed that the structure of this has changed a little bit. So rather than grouping things by the object name, nodes, links, and so on, we're now grouping them by the format. So you can export features as CSV, you can export them as Esri shapefiles, or you can export them as KMZ for use in Google Earth. So I'm going to go through each one of these in this video and just show you how each of these exporting features works. So firstly, the CSV format. If I click on that, you can now see a list of all the objects that you can export in this CSV format. By default, they're automatically all toggled on, and you can tick and untick them as you wish. And it's very simple. You just export them, and it automatically does that, creates the file names for you, and does that very simply in one go. Now with the Esri shapefile, again you get a list of the features. It's a slightly different list because some of them don't really translate to the shapefile format, but you get all of them toggled on by default again. And you also get quite a useful option, which is to combine them all together into a zip file when you're exporting them. And so we've got that ticked on, and I will export all of that data as well. And then finally, the third type of export is the KMZ type. And again, we've got the same structure in the dialog of options to select or not. And there are other parameters which you can set for the KMZ format and how it's going to appear in Google Earth when you export it. And you can have a play around with those. So I'll just keep them as default and export that. So that's all my data exported from the network, and you can see it in the model folder here. we've got all of our CSV outputs, which are named by the object that they represent. If I open up the links file, for example, you'll see it simply opens in Excel, and it contains various data about the links in that format. So you can easily access all of that data in the CSV format for any of those objects. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the other two formats in this example because they are newer to Paramics Discovery. So firstly, the shape file, I will extract the files from the zip folder in the shapefile format, and you can see all of the files that has extracted there. Now what I want to do is use some GIS software to open these shape files and see what they look like. So here I've got GIS product open, and I'm going to browse to the data which has been exported from Paramics Discovery as shape files, and I can see there the list of the different files in that format. And all I need to do is double click on them, and it loads them in to this window, and I can see all that data very clearly on the screen in front of me. Now once you're in this format, then you've got lots of options to manipulate that data, whether you want to change the colors or the styles, or toggle things on or off, or even access the data in tabular form. You've got all of those types of options available. So this GIS format is really useful for displaying the network information from Paramics Discovery in a very visual way. It could be something that you use to produce graphics for reports, or to send to clients, or so on. So that shapefile format can be very useful for different applications. Now the other format, as I mentioned, is the KMZ format, which we exported, and that's specifically for use in Google Earth. And it's very, very easy to use this by simply clicking on that KMZ file. It will open Google Earth for you if you've got this installed, and it will automatically find the location of this model, and you can see it zooming in to the model location that I've got and loading all of the data that I've exported. And because I toggled everything on from the network, I'm getting all of that data, which you can see on the left hand side of this window here. So I can see, for example, my nodes, which I can toggle on and off. They've also got their own labels, the node names, which again I can toggle on and off. Got links and link labels on the network. I've got my zones and zone labels as well. So it's very easy to turn this information on and off in this Google Earth display, and present essentially what you want to when you're using this format. They're my PT stops, and they've also got labels. And then if I scroll further down, I've got my PT routes, journey paths, and queue routes in this format as well. Okay, so hopefully that shows you the type of network information you can now export in 3 different formats, which can all be useful for different applications, whether it's analyzing the data in more detail or presenting to clients. Now the table in front of you just shows you the changes from version 22 to version 23, and you can see how much more there is in version 23 in terms of the exporting of this network data, particularly the Esri shapefile format and the KMZ format, where we've got many more options of data exporting than we previously had in version 22. And you can also see the signal timings, which we mentioned earlier. So the 5th and final feature which I want to show you today is the ability to export demands in a more efficient way. And this again was brought into Paramics Discovery 23 in November. Now I've got a large model in front of me. It's of Glasgow city centre and some of the surrounding motorway network as well. And I'm going to use this to demonstrate the exporting of demands from this model. So to do that, I'm going to go to the Edit Demand tab, and we can see in there we've got 3 demand sets. Within each of those there are 4 matrices. Now, previously, when we exported demands from the Demands tab, we needed to select a demand set and then select one of demands profiles or profile assignment and export each of those files individually. So if we had 3 demand sets like we do here and we wanted to export the demands, the profiles and the profile assignment, we would have had to do that in 9 different steps, 9 different exports. So effectively what we've done with this feature is bring that together so you can just do that in 1 step rather than 9. So it's really an efficiency improvement in Paramics Discovery. If I go to the Edit Demand menu and Export, the option in there now is to CSV. So similar to the Edit Network export option, we've combined this into a format rather than an object-based exporting. And if I click on that, I can see the dialog in front of me gives me clear options about what I want to export. So I mentioned the 9 different files. You can see those 9 toggled on the right hand side with the demand sets on the left and demands profile and assignment. And you can freely tick or untick any of those that you choose when you're exporting. You can also set some profile export settings, and I'll just leave those as default for this example, and then click export. So that's exported all of my demands, profiles and profile assignment for every demand set in one go, and you can see how quickly that worked even for a large model like this. Now in the model folder I've got those 9 files exported. The formats of these files haven't changed at all from the previous versions of Paramics Discovery, so that's exactly the same and will be familiar to you, but it's really just the efficiency of being able to export those in one go. That's it for today's session as we've looked at the new features introduced into Paramics Discovery 23, which was launched last November. Now if you haven't already, you can download Paramics Discovery 23 from our website or our support center and get access to all of these great new features. Next week we're going to be looking at the new things that we're bringing into Paramics Discovery 24, which will be launched later in the summer. So I hope you can join us then at the same time, noon, next Wednesday, for our 3rd session of this year's workshops. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found that useful and interesting, and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.